We're on Nichols Moss Nature Reserve in the South Lakes. It's a lowland peat bog and it is one of Cumbria Wildlife Trust's nature reserves. Peat bog is a really complicated ecosystem. This is sphagnum moss, and this is the key to understanding peat formation, peat bogs, and why they're so important. So first things first, give it a good squeeze to understand this is all about water. As well as the sphagnum, the water is the other sort of important part of a peat bog. So going back to school, photosynthesis is water, sunlight and carbon dioxide, and plants take in that carbon dioxide as part of growth. And when a plant dies, that carbon is then released back out into the atmosphere. Sphagnum's a little bit different because sphagnum grows in these really wet places and it holds a lot of water. So when sphagnum dies, instead of rotting like a normal plant, it just gets grown upon by more sphagnum. And the stuff that's squashed down beneath us and beneath that sphagnum is what we call peat. And that's why it's really important, because it's trapped all that carbon underground, not releasing it into the air. The problem comes though when the peat bogs aren't healthy. Then we get a huge amount of carbon being released. Peatland restoration is about managing the hydrology, managing the water that's held within the peat, controlling and slowing the water movement throughout the bog. The quality of the peatlands in England is poor. There's about 80% of the peatlands are considered degraded. Primarily human impact on them over the last 100, 2, 3 or even 1,000 years. Grazing, drainage, burning. This is a good example. All along this edge of this peat, at some point in history, there's been some cutting of the peat, probably for fuel, and it's left this exposed step off the peat. So you can see where we are stood now, the peat bog is actually a good metre or 2 metres higher than we are. The water is leaving the peat starts to decompose, and so you get this huge release of carbon into the atmosphere. And there's some little signs that that's happening other than the exposed peat itself. The dominance of the heather. Then you also get the grasses like Molinia, purple moor grass, which likes the drying out conditions. We've got the lichen here as well, which indicates it's perhaps drier than we'd want for a healthy bog. And what we have done is split the field up into 2 parts. So this first part of the field, the project here is primarily protecting that peat, stopping it degrading any further and shrinking any further, and then ultimately creating the conditions where new peat can start forming on top, and then we can start building up the peat. To do that, we built a series of cells created out of deep trench bunds, a underground dam essentially. The water level then can increase in the peat, getting close to the surface and then creating the conditions where sphagnum can grow. To give that process a bit of a helping hand, we've added some of those species that are going to encourage the creation of that ecosystem, which will protect the peat that's already here and create new peat eventually. So that predominantly is our sphagnum mosses. Lots of volunteers have helped with this process. We've also added other bog species such as crowberries, cotton grasses. We are also letting nature do its thing, so other species that we've not included in that planting scheme have found their way here naturally, things like sundews and cranberry. This second half of the project, what we wanted to do is create a fen habitat, a lag, which is like a buffer zone that would happen naturally between a raised bog and the land around it. The goal is primarily creating a connected system protecting the peat that is in existence. There are associated benefits in terms of biodiversity, with different plants growing, different invertebrates, different animals and birds. We've already seen a huge amount of dragonflies breeding on this site during the summer, but we've also had sightings of snipe, a little egret, even a marsh harrier hunting over part of the field. Here in Cumbria, we're lucky to have some of the largest lowland bogs in England, and these peat bogs are one of many solutions in the fight against climate breakdown. They store carbon, provide important habitats, and they soak up floodwater. Bogs like Nichols Moss are on our doorsteps, and they're already making a difference. if we look after the bogs look after us.